Hi, today I'm going to have a look at the Roland SH-1000. First I'll talk a little bit about what it is and how it works, and then I'll make some music with it. So what is it? It's a analog one oscillator mono synth, and it's a bit of a historic one because it's the first synthesizer ever to be manufactured by Roland. It was introduced in 1973 and it looks a little bit like an organ, and this makes sense because it was meant to go on top of an organ for some additional lead sounds. And just like your typical home organ, it's got a bunch of colorful tablets in the front of the instruments where you can select your presets and stuff like that. So let's maybe have a look at that first. To the very right, there are some tablets for preset selection. You cannot save your own presets on the SH-1000, but there are 10 tablets that let you quickly select a sound which faintly resembles the instrument mentioned on top of the tablet. So let's maybe have a listen to a couple of them. So a saxophone sounds like this. And here's the violin. When you have a preset selected, this bypasses the manual control over the wave shape selection, the filter, and the envelope, but you can still manually adjust anything that uses the LFOs as a modulation source. The preset selection tablets work in a way that the one to the right always takes precedence, so when you have multiple tablets engaged at the same time, you're going to hear the one furthest to the right. So in this case, the flute. When I engage the clarinet, I hear the clarinet, and this way the flute again. So combinations of presets are not possible. Let's maybe hear a last example. Here's the piano. Doesn't sound much like a piano, but sounds nice nonetheless. I generally love the sound of this synth. It's a very basic synth, but it just sounds great, and at the end of the day, that's what matters. If I don't want to use a preset and create my own sound, of course I can do this. Then I get a bunch of different waveforms to choose from. So let's maybe have a look at this oscillator section. Here we have a square, a pulse wave, and a sawtooth. Now, unlike with the presets, we can actually combine multiple waveforms to a new wave shape. You can see here it says combination. It's important to keep in mind, though, that it's still just going to be one oscillator, so no detuning or any of that stuff. It's just going to create a new wave shape for the one oscillator. So one option we get here is some multiple octaves for the same wave shape. So here, for example, 2 saws or even 3. You can see the wave shapes are color-coded. All the red ones are sawtooths. Or I can use different types of wave shapes. So here, for example, a square and a sawtooth, 1 octave apart. This is just the square, and with the sawtooth added. Here we can combine as many different wave shapes and octaves as we would like, but since it's just one oscillator, it's not going to result in a much thicker sound, just a different one. And then lastly, this white guy is the noise source, so we can add in some noise. Let's maybe quickly listen to the noise by itself. And over here I get to pick which kind of noise I would like. Here's what it sounds like when I set this to pink and back to white. And I can adjust the volume of the noise. The scratchy part here. This unit I got, it's a bit banged up and sometimes things don't work the way they're supposed to on the first try, but I kind of like that it seems to have had a eventful life up until now. So let's move on now to this next tablet section, which is for the amp envelope. First thing we can do here is turn it on. So now this ADSR envelope on the very left controls the amp. Then the 3 white tabs are envelope presets. This works the same as it did with the preset selectors. If there are multiple tabs selected, the one furthest to the right is going to be the one active. So when I hit one of the preset tabs here, my envelope settings here are not doing anything anymore, but we're going to hear this slow attack envelope preset. Then the next one is the staccato, and the last one is called percussion. For some reason, not entirely apparent to me. And then the last one, the yellow one, is a hold button, which bypasses the VCA entirely. Next up is the filter section. Of course, there's also a filter, so let's maybe have a listen to this filter first. Let me set things to this low sawtooth. It's a 24 dB diode ladder filter, and this is what it sounds like. I don't know if that's an issue with just my unit here, but with the filter all the way open we can hear this really high-pitched note, even though I only have the low sawtooth engaged. This is only the case for the sawtooth, so it's not really a filter issue, but I thought it's worth mentioning here since it's quite noticeable. On the right side here, there's the resonance, more resonance. Just sounds really cool. As you'd expect, you lose a lot of bass with the resonance, but get some nice harmonics here. And then the tabs of the filter section down here give you some options for modulating the filter. These correspond to this VCF Sense section up here, where we've got some knobs for the same three things. The first one's called Growl. This is just LFO modulation of the cutoff frequency. And this knob adjusts the depth of the modulation. The next one's called Wah. And it does pretty much what the name suggests. It's kind of an envelope modulation of the cutoff frequency, but not by the ADSR, but it seems to be some kind of not adjustable AD envelope. Again, this wah knob adjusts the depth of this modulation. And then the third option is to use the VCA envelope to modulate the filter as well. So this way I get better control over the envelope, and again I can adjust the depth with this ADSR knob. Somehow this does not seem to work when the ADSR envelope is not active for the VCA. So when I turn this off, the ADSR knob seems to just send a fixed voltage to the cutoff frequency and not the shape of the envelope. Then there's this section called Frequency Mod, which lets you modulate the frequency of the oscillator. There's a depth control for this vibrato as well. And then there's a delay tab for the vibrato, which makes it fade in slowly after you first press a key. The time or curve of this fade in you cannot adjust, it's just the way it is. And when you play legato, the vibrato is only going to be delayed for the first note you play, and then it's going to stay at whatever level you have the depth of the vibrato set to. Then you can choose which waveform you would like for the LFO. You can have it be a sine or a square. And this is maybe a good moment to talk about the LFOs. There's two, with rate controls for both of them on the top left. And this is the second one, which outputs a sine and a square. This rate knob up here lets you adjust its speed. This is the same LFO, by the way, which is used by the growl effect, only there is always going to be a sine. That's it for the frequency mod section, and then lastly there's a amp mod section which gives you a tremolo effect. Same thing here, there's a depth control, and then we can choose a waveform. Here we can choose between a sine and a ramp down shape. The ramp down shape is coming from LFO 1, and the sine shape is coming from LFO 2. So keep that in mind. By changing the wave shape, you also change the LFO you're using as a mod source. That can be a bit confusing. So both tremolo and vibrato can use the sine output of LFO 2. For vibrato, you can use the square output of LFO 2 as well. And for tremolo, you can use the ramp down shape of LFO 1. And then there's the LFO modulation of the filter's cutoff frequency, also called growl, which exclusively uses the sine output of LFO 2. Let's next talk about the remaining controls on the top panel that I haven't talked about yet. So this right here is my favorite feature of this synthesizer, a random note on-off switch. This just takes a sample of the noise source and sends it to the VCO, giving us random notes. So the volume of the noise has a direct influence on how random these notes are going to be. So right now I have it set to max, so the notes appear to be completely random. If I have it set to a low volume, it's just going to offset the note I'm pressing on the keyboard a little bit. If I turn on the hold function, I just get a bunch of random notes. Let me dial this back up. And I also have control over the rate at which the noise gets sampled. This is coming from LFO1. I'm gonna set the shape for the tremolo to a ramped down shape here and increase the depth. So this way I'm getting a real simple envelope for each new note. And then by adjusting the rate, I can choose how fast I want the new notes to appear. Here's what it sounds like combined with some filter LFO modulation, which runs at an independent speed. Yeah, fun stuff. With the tremolo off, you can easily hear that LFO1 is not only in charge of the speed for the tremolo, but also of the speed for the sample and hold circuit. Then next, we've got this glide button, which is kind of a poor man's pitch bend wheel. It lowers the note I'm pressing on the keyboard by a semitone. It appears, and when I release the button, the pitch goes back to the key I'm pressing. Then this pitch knob lets you adjust the pitch of the note you're playing by up to a fourth below and above the note you're playing. Then there's a switch to turn the portamento on and off, and a knob to control its speed. There's a master volume control, and a switch to transpose the keyboard in octaves with 3 positions. The keyboard itself goes across 3 octaves from F to F, and it's a pretty shabby one. There's no velocity or aftertouch or any of that stuff, but I still find myself having fun playing on that thing. So that's all the controls on the top and front of the instrument, so let's maybe have a look at the back before I get to making some actual music with this instrument. First, a word about what isn't there: no MIDI and no CV and gate, so you have to actually play the thing. Then from left to right, there's a tuning pot, a glide input for a foot switch to control the glide function, a expression pedal input for the cutoff frequency of the filter, a low, medium, high switch for the output voltage, a main output jack, and a switch for the AC voltage coming in. So let's make some music with it now. You can see I got the Digitakt out for kind of a new meets old thing, so I can sample some stuff on there. And I'm gonna start with a bass here. I'm gonna use the low sawtooth one more time. Again, you can easily hear that there's a pitch some 3 octaves above the one I'm playing, which is not supposed to be there, but I'm not gonna let that bother me here. Just gonna adjust the envelope a little bit. And I think this is already a pretty nice bass sound. So I'm gonna set the tempo on the Digitakt. And then I'm gonna add some drums first, so I have a little bit of a groove going. Quantize it, because I played it poorly. And then I'm ready to record my bass line. I'm gonna give this a name. I'm gonna call it SH Bass, and then I'm gonna save it and assign it to track 8. Then I'm gonna adjust the trig length of track 8 to infinity, and I'm also gonna adjust the length of the pattern to make sure I always get the entire pattern. Next, I'm gonna record some hi-hats. And then it's back to the SH-1000 for maybe a little top line. Vibrato is always nice to add a little bit of life. Maybe a little LFO filter mod as well. And I think I'm good to go. I'm gonna save this as well, call it SH Lick, and then I'm gonna assign it to the open hi-hat track. Now I need to place this on the right step in the sequencer, because I don't want it to start on the 1. And there it is. Next I want to do some cool laser beams. So for this I'm gonna crank up the resonance, dial up the ADSR amount in the filter modulation section, and adjust the envelope a little bit. And maybe use the low sawtooth again so I don't get as much of a distinct pitch. And then I'm just gonna record one of these and place them in the sequencer later. Then I'm gonna add some delay here and maybe sync it to the tempo. Next, maybe something really high and short, kind of a plucked thing. I'm gonna use the staccato envelope preset here. I'm gonna get rid of the crazy resonance again and open the filter back up a little bit. And then I'm gonna record something. I'm gonna play kind of a ARP thing here. This time I'm just gonna set the recording length to a fixed value of 2 bars, and then I'll start recording. I will name this as well and assign it to a track and then place it in the sequencer. Here I'm also adding some additional tremolo to the sample on the Digitakt and a lot of reverb. Some delay as well. And then what I think the SH-1000 is really best at are some cool retro lead sounds, which will easily cut through any mix. So to wrap this up, I'm just gonna play a little bit on top of this to give you a bit of an idea of how I like to use this instrument. I think it's a great synth. It's got character and loads of it, and it's just a lot of fun to play on it. So that's exactly what I'm gonna do. I hope you found this interesting or useful, and I would like to thank you a lot for watching.